Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and I kind of want to do a little bit of an update video to a news video that we did yesterday regarding the crisis in Sri Lanka. Obviously, when that video came out, we don't know everything that we know now. There's a lot of new developments and a lot of new information for us to talk about, and I figured it was kind of just not right to make one video kind of giving you guys an update on the situation, and then when things kind of happen or whatever in that said situation that I just kind of abandon the topic or whatever. Because after yesterday's video, there is now some new information for us to cover, so if you're unaware as to what I'm actually talking about in the first place, the nation of Sri Lanka has been going through like an economic and political crisis over the last few weeks. A pretty major situation has been unfolding in the area, and basically people are upset because of honestly pretty justifiable reasons. So the economy in Sri Lanka has taken a pretty massive hit, and it's gotten to the point where like basic necessities and basic goods that people need in order to survive, like medicine, food, fuel, things like that, have all become pretty much unattainable for a lot of people. They either cost too much or the supply is too short for them to get, and it's created a pretty big crisis where obviously the people are getting upset over the leadership of the country. They're kind of turning that anger back towards the leadership. Hundreds of thousands of protesters in the country have gone even as far as to pretty much take over the parliament building, multiple government buildings, and they even got to the point where they basically broke into the president's house and overtook it. The situation got so serious that the president of Sri Lanka basically got on an Air Force plane, a military plane, and fled to the Maldives. Overall, it hasn't been a very good situation for the people and the leadership in Sri Lanka. One of the demands that the protesters had is they basically wanted the prime minister and the president to both step down from their positions of power so that a unified government force could basically come in and try to address the issues that the country is having head on. Sri Lankan protesters retreated from government buildings they seized, and military troops reinforced security at the parliament on Thursday, establishing a tenuous calm in a country in both economic meltdown and political limbo. Embattled President Gotabaya Rajapaksa fled a day earlier under pressure from demonstrators furious over the island nation's economic collapse. He finally emailed his resignation Thursday, a day later than promised, according to an official, but the crisis was far from over since he has further angered the crowds by making his prime minister acting leader. Protesters want both men out and a unity government in to address an economic calamity that has triggered widespread shortages of food, fuel, and other necessities, but with a fractured opposition and confusion over who was in charge, a solution seemed no closer following Rajapaksa's departure. So basically, one of the two people that the country wanted to step down and out of leadership roles has officially stepped down. It was a day later than promised, which already was upsetting the crowd to begin with, but now that the news has broke that the prime minister that they also wanted to step down and out of a leadership position will now be the acting leader of the country, it has basically enraged people even more and upset them even more, as their demands have not been fully met, and they feel like the country is just simply not listening to them, which is pretty understandable. Obviously, if you as a country, which pretty much everybody in the country seems pretty unified on this whole thing, when you have hundreds of thousands of people protesting outside of these buildings and in the streets, that indicates a pretty severe level of unity amongst the people, and when you kind of go against their demands, against their wishes, it's obviously just going to stoke the flames of the fire to be even stronger. So people are really mad about this situation, and it could end up leading to worse situations happening. We don't really know what's going to happen next, but the slow and haphazard way it unfolded only added to turmoil. On Thursday, Indunil Yapa, an aide to Sri Lanka's parliament speaker, said Rajapaksa had emailed his resignation, but that it needed to be checked and an official announcement would not come until Friday. The protesters accuse Rajapaksa and his powerful political family of siphoning money from government coffers for years, and his administration of hastening the country's collapse by mismanaging the economy. The family has denied the corruption allegations, but Rajapaksa acknowledged some of his policies contributed to the meltdown. Months of protests reached a frenzied peak over the weekend when demonstrators stormed the president's home and office and the official residence of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. On Wednesday, they seized Wickremesinghe's office. Images of protesters inside the buildings lounging on elegant sofas and beds, posing at officials' desks and touring the opulent settings had captured the world's attention. They initially vowed to hold these places until a new government was in place, but the movement shifted tactics on Thursday, apparently concerned that any escalation in violence could undermine their message following clashes the previous night outside the parliament that left dozens injured. So in these situations where there's been massive amounts of protesters, there's been clashes with basically like police and military military forces, maybe even some counter protesters and whatnot that have gotten people hurt. And obviously in situations like that, when you're trying to make a point, when you're trying to make a case, you don't want people to become violent and basically make your movement look like it's some sort of like violent insurrection or something ridiculous. The people of Sri Lanka want this to basically peacefully blow over, but obviously the leadership seem to be kind of like, I don't know, shifting their feet a little bit. They don't want to obviously leave power. In a country like Sri Lanka, and when you hear, like in this news story, they talk about how basically, you know, the opulent settings, the elegant sofas and beds inside the buildings, that only probably really upset people more because, you know, there's people who are struggling to find food and basic supplies in Sri Lanka. There's widespread shortages of items that are necessities and things. And then when you go and see pictures of the president and the prime minister and all these places where they live and work and, you know, they got all this beautiful stuff, they're obviously well off and everything, that's really only going to enrage people more. But the movement seems to be taking a more peaceful turn as they've exited most of these buildings and they've decided that they're not going to hold these places until a new government comes along like they initially said they were going to. It seems like these people, these protesters, don't really want to antagonize the situation any more than it already has been. Obviously, that could be not only really dangerous, but it, yes, could obviously undermine the message of what they're trying to do, which is something they don't want to do. Obviously, they have the world's attention right now. You know, it's getting pretty widespread news coverage. It's, of course, getting coverage and talked about on social media. And in those moments when you're trying to make a point, when you're trying to make a case, you don't really want to make it look like you're the bad guy. You don't want to make it look like you're on the bad side of everything. And if people are being rowdy and destructive and violent, that's exactly what people could end up perceiving the entire movement as. So it really does kind of make sense that they're trying to, I don't know, make the movement more peaceful. They're trying to make everything a little bit better by, you know, backing away a little bit, by backing up what they're doing so that they don't end up making this a worse situation than what it already is. Protesters withdrew from the prime minister's residence and the president's, where some had moved a red carpet they'd rolled up back into place. Others held a news conference to announce they were also pulling out of the prime minister's office. Visakha Jayawir, a performing artist, described the bittersweet moment of closing the gate to the presidential palace after the crowds cleared out. Quote, "Taking over his residence was a great moment. It just showed how much we wanted him to step down, but it is also a great relief to leave," she said. "We were worried if people would act out. Many were angry to see the luxury he had been living in when they were outside struggling to buy milk for their children," which, like I had said earlier in the video, it's pretty understandable, right? If you're looking for the basic necessities, you're just trying to survive, trying to feed your family. The next thing you know, you see pictures of the president's house and, you know, he's got a $5,000 sofa sitting there and he's got pretty much everything he needs. He's probably got, you know, his groceries all stocked up and everything. Yet the everyday people are living basically day to day, it seems like, with these kinds of shortages. Not knowing possibly where your next meal could come from or how you're going to make it to work or how your family's going to survive obviously creates a lot of pressure for people. So honestly, I hope that this ends as well as it can. I don't know if the prime minister is also going to step down, but it seems like that's kind of what the people of Sri Lanka want, so that would probably be in their best interest. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel. Follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, talking about and updating you guys on the Sri Lanka situation and signing out.